JSW on regular basis. Areas of specialization of Mr. Sargunan are HERA, hazard study, safety audits, preparation of safety manuals, process safety management, behavioral based safety, and implementation of OSHA's 18001 standards. He is a lead auditor in ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and OSHA's 18001, and has carried out numerous training programs and audit and safety throughout India. A mechanical engineer by qualification, and with a lot of membership in various international organizations. We have a very right person to talk about behavior-based safety today. A warm welcome to Mr. T. Sargunan for this today's program. I also warmly welcome all the participants. A lot of participants have shown a lot of interest. A lot of people logged in. More than 32 people are already logged in. A warm welcome to all the participants to today's program on behavior-based safety. And thank you to NSC for organizing this and HSE for our members. Over to you, Sargunan, sir.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I take great pleasure to be with you all this afternoon, and it's a proud privilege to play the role of a guest speaker on behavioral-based safety on behalf of National Safety Council Kerala chapter. When Mr. Nandakumar approached me to handle the session on BBS, he was telling me we are calling a lot of safety professionals, and the presentation can be beyond teaching them regarding BBS. That is, it should be having some aspects which will be addressing the difficulties faced in general, and also what is the current trend and what will be the emerging trend, all that. So I have made my earnest efforts in bringing into you what is BBS, what is conventional safety approach on BBS, what are all the benefits of implementing BBS, and the challenges and the current trend thereof. Next slide, please. Hello. So regarding the history of BBS, all of you will be knowing that it started with Henrich. Henrich data finally says that more than around 85 to 90% of incidents are happening because of human error. One minute. Program going to our interrupt.
Mute, please.
Hello, Sargunan, sir. Sir.
Yeah, audible, sir. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello,
You are
sir.
audible. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Audio is not. Through the laptop, audio is coming.
Sir, your voice is not coming, sir. Hello.
Hello, Sargunan, sir. Sir, are you speaking to this phone? Hello, Sargunan, sir. But in the laptop, the sound is not coming. So please speak over to this phone itself. I will connect that speaker. Yeah.
I continue to speak over the mobile. Hello?
Yes, sir. We are hearing.
Okay, right. So Henrich's data does not tell why the person did it. It haven't analyzed on why the person is doing his physical error and all that. We haven't probed into that aspect. Next slide. Finally, the behavior-based safety phrase was coined in 1979 by Scott Geller. Hello.
Yes, sir.
1 minute. Somebody, I wanted sharing with my friend. He is trying to resolve it. That's why it is that screen is interrupting. Program started. Hello.
Hello, sir. We are hearing. Just speak over through this phone.
Hello. Hello, you are hearing me?
Yes, sir. We are hearing. Just speak over through this phone. Sorry. My teams.
1 minute, 1 minute. How do they communicate you for changing the slides?
Just speak over, sir.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for the interruption again. We will continue with the program. Please bear with us. The behavioral based safety phrase was coined in 1979. In 2001, the same Geller says, behaviorism has effectively solved environmental safety health problems in organizations and communities. Further, in 1998, Mr. Shri, as per him, it is behavioral safety is the only approach that has routinely produced significant reductions in incidents in well-designed research studies and all that. Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
So we will be shortly, for a short period, we will be discussing on the traditional safety programs and behavioral based safety. Next. Traditional approaches normally speak about recordable accident rates, incident reports, and near miss reports. Actually, these are all reactive. Traditionally, companies have focused on accident rate, which is purely reactive. Next, please. The disadvantages are it's reactive, as I was telling. It is not a proactive approach. It's a reactive approach. An injury must happen. After that, we will be investigating it and we will be taking the remedial measure and so on. And it's not specific also. Exactly what needs to be done on the job to improve the situation. That is not specifically pronounced in our conventional approach. And it has a low impact on at-risk behaviors. It's not going to address the at-risk behaviors directly at site. And we focus on the negative aspect of it. So these are all the disadvantages. Next, please. Now the traditional accident prevention, which we still follow, and we will continue to follow the same: hazard elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, personal protective equipment. All these things we will be conventionally following, which has a proven record in our safety history. That things will be becoming better by adherence to this traditional accident prevention approach. But for BBS to be fully effective, all this has to be implemented in spirit. Next, please. The conventional approach, all reactive. Next, please. A traditional accident prevention approach says focus on antecedents, that is events before it comes to evoke behavior. These antecedents are nothing but what we have in our regular program training, safety signs, pep talks, toolbox talks. These are all triggers. This can be effective in achieving for a short period, but people do not get feedback based on the antecedents what we practice in conventional approach. People do not get feedback on the effect of these approaches. So that is why it do not ensure the same behavior again and again. Next, please. A toolbox talk, for example, will be giving a result for a short period, but over a period of time, the employee will be resorting back to his old practices. This is because he never got any reinforcement or feedback based on the activity what he is carrying. That is the reason. This is because nothing has occurred after their correct behavior to indicate that it is correct, or it has given the benefit to the organization. That is why in traditional approach, this feedback is not going to the individuals. Next, please. Next slide, please. The same attempts to eliminate the hazard, having employees work around the hazard. The hazard is not actually not removed. People are asked to work around the hazard, guarding or warning the employees about the hazards, training the employees to deal safely with the hazard. The hazard will remain, but people will be working around it. Hello. There are 7 management components on safety management system. These are all the basics. Management leadership. We should have our vision, values, and our commitment towards implementing, pursuing our vision and values. For that, setting safety goals and objectives, and allocating budgetary provision for safety performance. And also defining the responsibility and accountability for the management personnel and employees, and the safety organizational setup by way of safety department, safety committees, and provision of safety budget. Next, please. And practices, safe work practices and procedures, job specific, and maintaining proper housekeeping, employing the correct type of contractors and giving them input and getting the work done to our requirements of the contractors and evaluating them and correcting them if necessary, and also emergency practices. And our PDCA, Plan to Check Act, Safety Review and Improvement. In that phase, we will be doing our PDCA, our accident investigation process, safety audit and inspection process. Once we have all our practices and procedures, whether these are all being followed according to the norms is checked through inspection and also through safety audit. Despite all this effort, if something goes wrong, we'll be going in. Hello.
Hello, sir.
Hello. Tell me.
Continue, sir.
Hello. Yeah. So the safety management systems components are being discussed now. Next slide, please. Please change the slide. And it continues with safety training based on needs and assessments, designed and presented very effectively. Not only employees, but the management personnel will also be trained, which will bring in changes in behavior on the job. And communication, both internal and external. And it should be appropriate to the audience. What we handle for workers will not be same for the engineers and other people. Then the effectiveness of the communication methods, audio, visual, verbal, classroom training, by way of display of posters, etc. All these things comes under our regular safety management system. Why I am highlighting all these things are, this has very much relevance when we further discuss on these. Next, please. The overall safety culture. The 7 components what I discussed that has been now presented in the form of a simple slide and categorized into organizational aspects, material resources and people resource. Under organizational aspects, whatever we discussed till now is safety policy, procedures, rules and regulations, manufacturing and management systems, techniques, organizational setup for various work activities, and financial position. This comes under organizational aspect. Under material aspect, resources, machines, equipment including personal protective equipment required for carrying out the activity, instruments, space and tools required, the condition of raw material, products, building infrastructure, all these things comes under material resources. People resource, psychosocial skills, working team, their attitude, their lifestyle, the basic technical knowledge possessed by them, skill, health condition, their family background, personality, group ethics or group norms, everything comes under people resources. All these 3 aspects put together creates the total safety culture of any organization. It cannot be taught in a isolated. All these things put together, the organizational safety culture is evolving. Next slide, please. And we have different layers of defense, technical, organizational, and human, which is known to all of us. The highlight of this slide is the last one is personnel operators. Individual behavior is the last barrier to accident. Whatever effort we take by way of engineering, procedures, supervision, training, and by providing proper personal protective equipment, ultimately the operator's behavior that determines whether all these barriers will be successful in preventing the incident or accident. So that is why the human aspect, the behavioral aspect, that becomes very critical in running our industrial activities. Next slide, please. So there are different realities and fallacies regarding safety. Different working conditions cause accidents. By enforcing rules, we can improve safety. Safety professionals can keep workers safe. This comes under fallacy. Low accident rates indicate safety programs are working well. It is not so. Actually, safety program may be well, but there can be still accidents if people are not behaving properly. Investigating to find the root cause of accident will improve safety. Yes, of course, provided the recommendations are implemented. Awareness training improves safety. Of course, if the behavior also is reflecting on this. And rewards improve safety. That is also to some extent. Yeah. Percentage of safe behaviors increasing and the percentage of at-risk behaviors increasing. This will happen once if our all safety interventions are effective. If our safety interventions are effective, we will definitely see these results. Reporting of near miss and near hit will increase. Number of observations and level of participation among the employees will be increasing. Frequency and severity of injuries will be decreasing. Then acceptance of responsibility and accountability will be increasing. All these things we can see. But by and large, the percentage what we see with these aspects is not to the expected level. Why? We will see in the next slide. Because we take safety as a priority. It's not a value. It should be the core value in any organization. It cannot be fancy, or it cannot be a roundabout approach. It should become a value part and parcel of every employee associated with the organization. And we do not give same importance as we give for production, quality, or any other financial aspects. Safety should also be treated like any other functioning in an organization. And it's not driven through continuous improvement. Whenever there is some requirement, we will be making big noise on safety. And when things become normal, it will take a back seat. That is another reason. It's not integrated with the everyday work activities. And importance and support to the safety is very much lacking. For example, I used to tell all the safety professionals when they go for a production meeting and all, they should be permitted to speak first. The unit head or the chairperson who is conducting the program should call for the safety manager and ask him, is there any safety issues first of all? Or otherwise, what will happen once they enter into the production discussion? A safety manager will not be having a voice to open. So that is why the lack of importance and support to safety. That is also another problem. And also written down safety procedures and all is now very familiar. In those days, it is not that much familiar. Management systems and procedures. Once we entered into all these OSHA 18000 or IS 45001, we are resorting to written procedures and all. And lack of accountability. We will be in a position should be in a position to appreciate the difference between owning responsibility and accountability. What is the difference? Responsibility, we can come out with excuses for not carrying out an activity. But whereas an accountability is we are answerable. At any cost, we have to carry out the job that is given to us. At any cost, we have to ensure safety. So that is why lack of accountability is another problem. Because of that, safety programs do not work. Next slide, please. So now this slide, this illustration, very clearly demonstrates the gap between zero accident potential and the present condition is the behavior gap. The gap between where we are now and zero harm is behavior gap. Now it also explicitly pronounces legislation, technology, adhering to rules and regulations, everything we follow. Because of that, we are bringing down the accident rate to a highly considerable level. But still it is not nearer to zero because of the behavioral gap. There comes the behavioral based safety. So BBS approach uses top-down leadership and bottom-up engagement to deliver a safer working environment for our people. An environment where our people are comfortable looking after each other and able to voice concerns without fear of reprisals. If somebody points out the discrepancy or inadequacy or deficiency in the systems what we adhere to, they will be disciplined. It will not be tolerated. That should not be the condition. Once people are free from fear of raising safety aspects, that is a healthy situation in which we can progress on safety. So behavioral based safety paves route, paves the path for people to express their mind without fear of reprisals. That is another advantage. Next slide, please. The basic requirements depends on safety human behavior. It can be avoided, accidents can be avoided by correct behavior. Correct behavior can be achieved by better attitudes. And to behave correctly means responding to the required safety rules and procedures. Every individual should be educated on the requirements by virtue of safety rules and procedures, and they should be in an unequivocal language communicated the effect of not adhering to rules and regulations, that they should be following it. So a norm is set for their behavior. And also those who send people to work should assume responsibility for the behavior of people under their control. The management as a whole set the task, control the working operation, and supervise the execution. These are all the basic requirements as all of us know. Next slide. So behavior versus attitude. Behavior and attitude are interdependent, but they are not one and the same. Next slide, please. So, in short, behavior-based safety management focuses on behavior, and it is defined as a process of involving people in observing unsafe behavior, as well as listening to verbal response, indicating undesirable or unfavorable attitude towards safety, with a view to correct behavior by giving feedback so that accidents and injuries are prevented. In simple terminology, BBS has a procedure to observe people, appreciate safe activities, good job done, and seek explanation or seek reason for non-adherence to safety norms or violation of safety norms or deviation from set rules. We will hear from them and we will be rectifying based on the feedback received from them things so that the rules and regulations are followed by those people. So controlling behavior, it prevents 98% of accidents. This is by and large, it's a general rule which we have accepted upon. Next, please. It's a tool. BBS is a tool to collect data, as I was telling, through employees' involvement at all levels of the organization. BBS, anybody who is employed in an organization, they will be a part of the team. They will go around the plant and observe things, get input by way of what are all the deviations and why it is happening. So they any up to management personnel, even top man of the organization, they will go into the plant for safety observations under BBS. It's a method used to develop and encourage a proactive approach to safety. We will not be waiting for something to happen. We will be looking into the soft floor, the at-risk behaviors or unsafe acts. In a common terminology, we call it as unsafe act. We will be looking into that and we will work towards prevention of those unsafe acts and at-risk behaviors. So it is a proactive approach. It will understand why people behave the way they do by way of interacting with them. Under BBS, safety observation is not an observation if we do not enter into conversation with the individual who is being observed. Without conversation, it is not an observation. And also it focuses on engaging, motivating, and assisting the employees. We will be interacting with them. By this way, we will be expressing our concern towards them. It's another very important desirable factor under BBS. We will be interacting with the individuals and we will be expressing our concern towards their well-being. That is an additional advantage. And also BBS, we will be doing it for a month. After that, we will be stopping. It is not so. It is an ongoing effort. It has to be continuously maintained. For example, what we are now doing in an organization in which I am associated for the past 20 years. For the past 10 years, we are carrying out this safety observation process. Tireless. Every month, the observations are made. The observations are categorized into different deviations and action plan is made how to get rid of that major deviation from the greater chunk of the employees. That's an ongoing process. And behavioral safety is interpreted in different ways. Now this slide will be telling us what is not behavioral based safety. It's not a replacement for our traditional safety or current safety program. I already highlighted that all the components of safety management system at present, that has to continue effectively. Continuance or effectiveness of the existing safety management system. Why it happens, why people do not behave fulfilling it, will be detected by BBS and we will be taking remedial measures. That is the concept of BBS. It does not end up with the observation and feedback. After observation and feedback, we will go further in changing the approach of the employees by way of telling them the importance or by way of providing the resources or by way of making an engineering change or any system change, then only the BBS activity will culminate. We do not stop with the simple observation and feedback. It further goes. And it is not a process that works without management. Management has to be totally committed, and it should be traveling along with the BBS campaign all along. And also, we will not be blaming each other the BBS approach. And we will not be bothered about the incident rate. BBS effectiveness will not be calculated through incident rate. Incident will be coming down, that is our approach. But it will not be a measure for BBS effectiveness. And at the same time, once we implement BBS, everything will come to normal, or abnormalities will be stopped. It is not like that. It is not a cure-all. And it's not a theory. Just by telling like this, handling a session like this, it do not end up. We have to work. We have to practice. We have to be on the field on regular basis. Consistent effort has to be carried out. The observers and the teams formed day in and day out according to the prescribed norms. They should go in for observation weekly twice. They have to go weekly twice. All the observation has to be collected together through some computerized program. We should allocate which area is more in a particular month or in a particular quarter, and take remedial measures. So it's not just a theory. Next, please. So features continues. To make it fully effective, the organization should already needs to be committed to and fully implementing the incident control measures. Time and again, we have to insist on this. Without implementing the regular safety management aspects, BBS cannot be successful. So BBS is an addition to an already existing strong safety program. It is not a replacement. And also it is not an aspect which will be dumping the responsibility of injury elimination upon the working force. People may think BBS, different teams are formed, people are working towards verticals. For example, some team will be working on orca-type, some team will be working on confined space entry and all that. It does not mean that we are dumping the responsibility of elimination of accidents upon working personnel. But for them to own it and understand it and practice it in real spirit, we are making them responsible. Or otherwise, it is not dumping the responsibility on them. So the idea behind BBS is to fix the behavior problem, not assign blame. Okay? Next slide. So now, in this slide, we are seeing the first chart says 75% safe behaviors are being followed. 25% safe behavior is not. In that case, still there is a probability of 1 in 4 chance of an incident. In the next slide, 90% safe behavior level is there. Still there is a 1 in 10 chance of an accident. Normally, one of our unit heads in the organization which I am supporting, he used to tell, Sargunan sir, it is not 10% or 90% in safety, it is 100%. If you are jumping across a well, if you jump only 100%, then only we will be escaping. We will be alive. If you jump 90%, still we will be falling inside the well. Likewise, in attaining zero accident potential or zero incident potential, 10% adherence or 10% norms fulfillment is required. Next slide, please. hundreds of percent safe behaviors. So we cannot rely on chance or luck to avoid incidents. That would be like spinning a revolute wheel. Only at 100% safe behavior levels do we eliminate the chance of an incident. Incident, as all of us know, it ranges from near miss to fatality. That is under the incident. Now the new terminology is injury causing incident, no injury causing incident. There is no accident even under 45,001 accident terminology is not there. The situation all companies should be striving for is to have work groups performing at 100% safe behavior levels. This would give the best chance of eliminating incidents. So BBS is a key tool that can move companies from performing chart 1 to performing chart 3. I think you will all be appreciating this. Okay. Why we should use behavior based safety? 90% of the incidents are behavior driven because of behavior. Other 10% are also 90% of them because of the behavior of a person not directly involved. Suppose we say unsafe conditions. Unsafe conditions are created by somebody's unsafe behavior. So always it is a rounding around a person. There is a saying in Tamil, wherever we go around, ultimately we say, oh Lord, save me. Ultimately we go to Almighty. Likewise in safety, wherever you roam around, everything will culminate into whether it is unsafe act or unsafe condition. It will end up with the human being. That is why behavioral based safety takes some more importance. And increasing the number of safe behaviors being performed is essential for incident elimination. Behavior based safety helps this. And at the same time, once you apply BBS, all unsafe acts will be eliminated. It cannot be taken like that. So it's a process. We have to work on that day in and day out. The frequency of the organization towards the approach on safety should be the same. Somebody thinks efforts will be taken, should be taken, but others think, hey, it's me. Just say means accident will happen. That should not be the approach. It's a process that goes along with the other elements of your good incident reduction program, and everybody should work in tandem. Everybody should work together. Then only it will be beneficial. Next slide, please. So BBS helps to improve, enhance safe behaviors and reduce, bring down at-risk behaviors. Not replace existing safety systems. It will only enhance the existing safety systems. The behavioral aspect of human beings is not coming up to the expected level in implementing the safety management system what we have introduced. For that only we go for BBS. How to improve the involvement of every individual by changing their behavior. That is the behavioral based safety's activity. So it's not a replacement for existing management system. That should be taken into the mind always. Even for the safety officers who are all now hearing, I would like to say if any of your top management personnel says introduce BBS, everything will be all right. We have to be very categorically telling them that by introduction of BBS, it will not do magic. BBS will find out why existing safety management system is not adhered by people. We will be changing the behavior of the people by adopting BBS. That only has to be taken into mind. Next, please. impact on target and non-target behaviors. We are now speaking on the benefits of BBS. Suppose under BBS, we target on safe behaviors. That increases. Apart from that, non-targeted behaviors also increases. The statistics are the steps carried out. It says the performance of non-target safe behaviors also increased, even though they were not specifically included as part of BBS intervention package. This shows that benefits of implementing behavior-based safety expand beyond the bounds of the targeted safety behaviors. Whatever we expected, beyond that we will get benefit. And a successful approach to improving workplace safety is behavioral based safety. That has been already demonstrated, established. Next, please. So the effect continues. Organizational variables like productivity and quality. We introduced BBS for behavioral based safety, improve safety, but it has an impact for productivity as well. With the non-targeted behavior, it increases in productivity. It is observed, and it has no apparent adverse effect on productivity and quality. Some other study says it do not adversely impact productivity or quality. Somebody will be telling, if you focus on safety, production will be lost. Yeah. It's not so. Once we focus on safety and the availability of time and the morale of the people are improved, naturally production and quality increases. That has also been established through research. So ultimately, the manufacturing organization would realize an overall benefit, considering the cost savings associated with accident and injury prevention. That has to be taken by heart. Next, please. Statistical process control techniques are also being employed under BBS. Here, data do not give us results. By way of observing working patterns of people in the field, we collect data, and in a piecemeal way, we rectify the situation wherever we look into. That is not going to help. Through statistical technique, we should gather the overall picture. We will create the overall picture of where things are repeatedly getting deviated and where their focus is required upon some specific issue. Like that, we have to focus and get rid of them. For that, statistical process control techniques are very much helpful. Next slide, please. And this is the methodology of BBS. Identify critical behaviors, gather data related to those critical behaviors, provide feedback to the people who are giving us both safe and unsafe behaviors by way of feedback. Then use the data collected to remove barriers. As I was telling, through statistical techniques, we collect and come to a conclusion which area requires focus, and we have a system correction, or we launch a program for change. For example, if there is a regular negation of wearing full body harness while working at height, that is dominant observation in our BBS approach. We will be focusing on programs towards improving wearing of safety harness. Like that, we will be working. So now we are going to see a BBS process flowchart. Please click on continuously. So we will be having observers and data collection, and they will be giving feedback at the site also. And it will go to the data management team. The data management team will collate everything and come to a conclusion, as I was telling, through statistical techniques. And it will go to the barrier removal team. What comes in between implementation of safety systems? That will be discussed through brainstorming and by interaction of people. They will be coming out with some solution. That with the concurrence of the steering committee, that solution will be implemented with the workers. So that's what the entire process flowchart says. Observe, collect data, give feedback, and appreciate whatever is right, and give some corrective measures for deviations. Then feed the entire data to the data management team, and data management team will give the end results to the barrier removal team. The barrier removal team will come out with solutions for the barrier between the employees and the safety systems. And with the concurrence of steering committee, it will be given to the workers. It will be implemented. So the behaviors of the workers will be getting a positive change. So that is the complete process. Next slide, please. Management sponsor is required for all this. Commitment. Next. Yeah. That is, in short, the steps are define safe behaviors and prepare checklist, observe behaviors and give feedback, decide behavioral action plan, and implement. This is the entire system of behaviors. Next, please. It is under ABC model. All of you will be knowing about that. Antecedent, behavior, consequence. Antecedent is nothing but triggers, which guides us towards our behavior. Based on behavior, the consequences will be set. Based on the consequences, whether the behavior will continue or not. If it is positive, the consequences are positive, the behavior will continue to happen. If the consequences are negative, sure, certain, positive. If the consequences are positively taken and the benefits are sure and the benefits are certain, the behavior will continue. If the consequences says the benefits are uncertain, the benefits are negative, and benefits are unsure, in that case the behavior will not continue. That is the complete concept of this ABC behavior model. So this is a behavior change model that can be used to change any behavior, not just safety. Even for anything, you can apply this ABC. Next, please. The intention of this program is not to teach BBS. We are discussing on what will be beneficial ultimately, what are all the traditional approach, to strengthen the traditional approach, how we are going to make use of BBS, what are all the weaknesses in BBS, what are all the things that has to be done to strengthen BBS approach, up to what limit, with what limitations we will be making use of BBS. Those things will be discussed in this session. So antecedents, as I was telling, it will trigger behavior. Behavior is human performance. It is visible, that can be watched. Attitude cannot be watched. Only behavior can be watched. And the consequences, as I was telling, either reinforce means we will appreciate them to continue with that. And punish behavior if it is not acceptable to the organization. So that is the NSC model. Next slide, please. A stimulus or event that occurs before a behavior in time, that is antecedent. Behavior is anything that we can see an individual do or say. Consequences is a stimulus or event that occurs after a behavior in time. Despite the fact that we rely heavily on antecedents, it is consequences that have the greatest influence on behavior. Though we have directive, people will not always go through the directive. Once if the directive gives them good result, then only they will continue to have the practice. Otherwise, they themselves will stop behaving. So consequences are the thing which determines the behavior of individuals, not always antecedents. So essentially, everything we do changes our environment in some way. When the environment changes in a way that we like, then we will repeat the behavior that led to the change, as I was telling. Next, please. So consequences are creating culture. Every culture is a culture of consequences. Based on the consequences, we will repeat those behaviors. So the culture is determined. The more we behave the right way, the organization will have a right culture. And behavior is a function of its consequences, and consequences will decide the culture. As I was telling, the consequences need to be soon, the consequences need to be certain, the consequences needs to be positive, and it should be personal. Anybody and everybody thinks, what is there in it for me? How my safety is ensured? Organizational value is there. Once if I feel that I am safe, the organization is also safe. So the personal that dominates always, the personal well-being that gives results to the organization also. Next slide, please. We will now see what are all the positive and negative reinforcement, and what is reinforcement. How to give effective reinforcement, how to make use of reinforcement in a positive way. Those aspects we will be seeing now. This will be enhancing our approach towards behaviors. There are only 4 types: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. We will see in the coming slides what it is. Behavior reinforcement. Any consequence that increases the likelihood that the behavior it follows will occur in the future. Once we reinforce, suppose somebody is wearing everything intact and he is a regular adherer to safety norms, we will be appreciating him. That is reinforcement. Giving him feedback by way of ensuring him what you are doing is right. This is the way we want you to behave. So that good behavior will get repeated. In other words, if you promote a behavior and make someone feel good about performing that behavior, or give them a reason to perform that behavior, its occurrence in the future will likely to increase. So that's what reinforcement does. Next, please. Acceptable behavior must be constantly reinforced. Once we appreciate, after that we stop appreciating. For example, an astrologer or a person who is behaving as an astrologer through a parrot, he will be having a set of cards. He will be asking for Sargunan Sahab, a card le lo. Then that parrot will go and pick up a card and give it to the astrologer. He will read the benefits which I will be facing in future. But he will not keep quiet. He will give a grain to the bird, to the parrot. Every time it picks a card, it will wait for the grain. Every time a child does a good job or makes a good dance, we appreciate. Oh, nice, nice. Like that, human being is always longing for recognition. If it is given for the right thing, that right thing will continue. That is the concept of this behavior reinforcement, positive reinforcement. So never miss an opportunity to give a pat on the back of your employee for an acceptable behavior. People usually respond to positive reinforcement. Click once again. Yeah, people usually respond to positive reinforcement. Next, please. Reinforcement considerations. Reinforce frequently and in public. Don't do it secretly. Calling him to your chamber and appreciating him, that is okay. But in your open forum, you should be appreciating him. Then reinforce only for acceptable behavior. If it is not acceptable for any other value, don't appreciate them. Reinforce immediately, never wait. Adapt it. You should appreciate people. Then reinforce during the safe behavior if possible. During the safe behavior itself, you are wearing all PPE, it's fine. You are adhering to the procedure. You are always adhering to the procedure. I appreciate this. Like that, we should be appreciating them then and there. Be specific about the reinforced behavior. You are always good. Don't tell like that. You are always wearing safety harness while you are working at night. Be specific. You appreciate a specific safe activity in open forum so that everybody will realize that this is an appreciable safety behavior. So give non-verbal positive cues also. Suppose when somebody is doing a good job, you make a nod, you make a smile, you give a pat. Be totally positive. Don't go into a negative approach. Be sincere. Suppose with for namesake, verbally you are appreciating, by heart to heart you are not appreciating. People will realize it. Be sincere in giving reinforcement. People see a lot, but don't say a lot. So people will realize. Accentuate the positive. You should make a proper propaganda, publicity. That is accentuate. You should accentuate a positive aspect always. That is very much required. Next slide, please. Reinforcement. Previous. Positive reinforcement leads to durable behavior change and happier employees. If you wear PPE because you feel like you are contributing to safety in your organization, you will be more likely to wear PPE, even when you are not watched. Voluntary adherence to safety norms. That is always preferable. Doing something that results in positive reinforcement promotes strong, durable behavior change in addition to other new positive behaviors. Once somebody is following certain safety norms, they will continue to follow other safety norms also. Next slide. So it's graphically presented. Positive reinforcement is getting something you like. It should be used to recognize and reward the behavior you seek. Next, please. Negative reinforcement. What it is? If you wear PPE to avoid a fine, this is you working under negative reinforcement. People should not behave properly in fear of punishment. That will not last for longer. if they adhere to safety norms, since it is going to do benefit for them and to the organization, that is worth reinforcing positively. People work under pressure, people adhere due to fine, that is negative reinforcement. Working because we have to, will get sufficient performance, will also give result, but only adequate or what is bare minimum, that only will be adhered to. So working because we have to, will get sufficient performance, but working because we want to will mean we get maximum performance. Next, please. So negative reinforcement intent is to increase desired behavior. The worker performs to avoid consequences. They will perform to the minimum standard. It will work well if the focus is on compliance. Only for compliance, negative reinforcement will work. Next, please. So it is graphically represented. You can see a flat curve. You do enough to escape a punishment. This is avoidance of punishment. It should be used where a behavior you seek is not taking place, and you want to get the message across that you are serious about wanting it to happen. So for adherence to statutory requirement or that regulating aspects, we can make use of negative reinforcement. Next, please. Both positive and negative reinforcement can increase behavior. Positive reinforcement maximizes the performance, whereas negative reinforcement only gets you compliance. Next slide, please. So, to have a very good effect, we should mix both in the ratio of 1:1. If you give 4 positive reinforcement, give 1 negative reinforcement. You see the graph is continuously improving. Both positive and negative reinforcement will increase performance. To create a true positive environment, they should be used in the ratio of 4:1. This means that you are balancing the rewards for the right behavior with the occasional correction of poor behavior. This is a healthy situation. So these things has to be borne in mind while we are implementing DBS, while we are giving reinforcement, when we are giving feedback. Next, please. So now you see, it's through a cartoon it is explained. Positive and negative reinforcement. Good safety suggestion, Joe. Keep bringing them up. One more report, bad report like this, and you are out. That is negative reinforcement. Next, please. So punishment. Its intent is to stop undesired behavior. You get something you don't want when you misbehave. Does not predict what the replacement behavior will be. Is usually unintentional in organizations. If you engage in horseplay, you will be suspended from work. So that is the effect of punishment. It is intent is to stop undesired behavior. Next slide. You see now, they stop functioning. The performance level reduces over a period of time. If you go in for punishment mode, you get something you don't like. This is getting something you don't want. It should be used when you want to stop a behavior in its tracks. At the beginning of anything, say no. The first time and every time you say no. Like that, if you want to stop abruptly some unsafe behavior, we can go in for punishment. Next, please. Extinction. Withdrawal of positive reinforcement. You don't say, Tamil Solomona, Poonum Solomella, Pushpon Solala. You don't say anything. Neither you appreciate, nor you make a nod, nor you make a smile. You keep quiet. People do not get any reaction from their immediate bosses, immediate leaders. Then it is called extinction. They will go into a withdrawal mode. So if you read further, you can find out worker eventually performs without expectation of consequences other than wages. I get wages, that is enough. Like that he will come and do his job and go back. He will not do anything extra. So that is called extinction. A withdrawal of positive reinforcement will bring in extinction. Person is ignored. No relationship with management. They will not say hello to each other. They will come and work and go. And it is epidemic in the organization. The entire organization will be destroyed. So it is epidemic. This extinction level is epidemic in the organization. It does not matter how hard I work around here. Nothing will be there. I will not be appreciated. That mood will come to the people. So even a small good deed has to be appreciated. Like children are getting appreciation for every good thing they do. Likewise, employees should also be appreciated. As I mentioned already, any human being is longing for recognition, good positive response. So lack of interest is flourishing again across the organization, but who cares? That's what it is, extinction. You feel ignored. Totally the performance will come to zero. This is not getting any recognition or feeling ignored. It should be used to diminish poor behavior over time, primarily by ignoring it. If any poor behavior is there, you ignore it, it will die down. But at the same time, the danger is when you practice it inadvertently, without knowing, if you do not issue positive reinforcement, when a behavior you seek takes place, this extinction will come. I think we have enough explained about all the 4 stages: positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, punishment, and extinction. These are all necessary elements to be known while practicing behaviors. Next, please. So, the 5 R's of behavior. If you regularly recognize and reward, you will rarely have to reprimand. This punishment and extinction level, you will not reach at all if you regularly recognize and reward people. Even for a small improvement done, for a shutdown completed without any safety incident, you reward them by way of providing them 10 rupees or 20 rupees over month. Anybody who receives, however big he is, if he is receiving a small gift, they will get elated. So that tactics we should start using. So that's what positive reinforcement in BBS. Next please. Next please. Next please. Steps to be followed by observers. We have discussed on the implementation, reinforcement, and feedback. Now we will be seeing on what are all the effective approach for an observer. Observe the workers for 30 to 60 seconds before commenting, before giving feedback. Before that, introduce yourself to the workers. You tell them for what purpose you have come there. There cannot be a thief and police approach. We will be knowing with each other that BBS program is going on in our organization. It is for improvement of behaviors of people. That should be known to each other. But do not distract the workers at a critical moment when they are working at night. Don't shout and ask them to come down. By the way, he is coming down, he can even fall. Disturb a person safely. Wait until the interruption can occur when there will be no risk posed to the workers. Explain what you are doing and then you will observe them for a bit longer. Observe them for some additional. Stop the workers after that for giving feedback. Next, please. Feedback what you have observed in a positive manner. Be aware of the self-esteem of the workers. Don't ridicule them. Don't shout at them. Here all, by virtue of our education, authority, and social and economic level, are in an advantageous position. But the workers, they are underprivileged, they are less awareness, they are having less awareness, and their educational level is also low, and they come for their daily work, daily bread. They come for earning their daily bread. So we should have really concern towards them, and we should not shout on them when they are doing some deviation from the set norms. So provide positive reinforcement for all those behaviors that are performed in a safe manner. Be aware of the self-esteem of the workers. Don't ridicule them or shout on them. Then after giving positive reinforcement, when there is a risk behavior, at-risk behavior, give them feedback or get the feedback from them why they are involving in that at-risk behavior. Suppose a person is climbing to a height through some available window or some oil drum, empty oil drum, for reaching a height. We should ask them why you are reaching the height like this in an unaccepted fashion. We should ask them. Then he will come out, there is no ladder. No provision is made by the organization to reach the height. In order to complete the job, I am making use of the available resources. Whether they will be connected. So when at-risk behaviors are observed, ask for feedback from the workers to help understand why the at-risk behaviors are being performed. Then provide coaching, correction, so that the required safe behavior is obtained. Then thank the workers for their assistance. Encourage them to continue to work safely. Note down all your observations in different categories. For example, position of people, procedural violation, PPE non-adherence, housekeeping is not all right. Like that, under different categories, you can note down your observation, which will further be processed by the BBS team. Next slide, please. But stop the behaviors which will be leading to serious consequences. It may even lead to fatal. Those type of unsafe behaviors has to be stopped instantaneously. That is dangerous to life. At that stage, we need not follow the steps of safety observation. So it requires a system or procedural change for this particular observation. So we have to immediately stop that activity and work for system procedure change. Next slide, please. Leadership influence and in BBS. Leaders play a major role. Without leaders' proper involvement, BBS cannot be successful. BBS programs are typically driven by frontline employees. However, supervisors and managers play an integral role in promoting, modeling, and reinforcing the program. Without strong safety leaders, the BBS program will suffer and the expected positive results may not be obtained. Next slide. Under leadership influence, managers' own behavior acts as a model for their reports. We call it as leading by example. Yatha Raja, Tata Praja. How a king behaves, the citizens of the country will also behave. Likewise, the leader's behavior is replicated by their reports. So, the leader's attitudes witnessed in what they say formally and informally that make the mark. The most important effect comes from what the supervisors really do and think. What they say, they do and think. So, they behave on behalf of large group of employees. When there is a critical situation, the worker will behave in the way the supervisor behaves. He will not seek for assistance at the time. He will assume our supervisor will tell this only. All of a sudden, if there is no time to get feedback from the supervisor, the worker will behave in the way which our supervisor will behave in this situation. So leadership influence is a very important aspect in business. Next slide, please. So in BBS, under different phases, how a leadership will be influenced. Under ABC model, the leader's responsibility is to identify and communicate antecedents and consequences to safe and unsafe behavior. Under reinforcement, when consequences have been identified, a strong leader will assess whether reinforcement can be implemented for the desired behaviors or not. Under feedback, it is the leader's responsibility to deliver frequent feedback when he observes safe behavior. It should not be stopped without it. Next, please. Under goal setting, the leader can initiate goal setting with his staff, which can lead to staff setting their own goals. A leader should set his goals. To fulfill his goal, he has to set the goals of his subordinates, people working below him. That is the concept. And under behavioral observations, a leader will behave like this. A successful observation program typically involves employees conducting observations on each other. However, the safety leader needs to champion the process. He should find out whether the observers from his department are carrying out the observations according to the set norms. Are they fulfilling the requirement by way of filling in the forms and giving that filled forms to the committee? All these things has to be championed by the leader of the respective department. So these are all the roles of a leader in implementing BBS. Next, please. Feedback. The most important communication tool helping people stay healthy and safe. And it is a combination of positive and constructive information. It's a combination of goal setting and frequent feedback procedures for maximal behavioral change. So feedback is an essential element for maximizing behavioral change. Next slide, please. Skill should be there giving feedback. It should be carefully done. The purpose of feedback is provide constructive information to help employees become aware of facts which lead to unsafe acts. It is important to give feedback in a non-threatening way to minimize defensiveness. If you shout at them or if you blame them, any employee or any human being for that matter will become defensive I did it because of that, I did it because of this, you haven't done this. Like that blame game also will start. That is why we should not give feedback to any employee in a threatening way. We should give it only in a non-threatening way. So that is the skill to be acquired in giving feedback. Next slide, please. Focus, yeah, previous. Focus feedback on behavior rather than the person. You should not comment on. I know about you. You are always naughty. You will be behaving. Like that, we should not give feedback. Focus on observation rather than inference. Oh, you might have, I think that you might have done this mistake. Like that, we should not. If anybody has made a thing like this, based on observation only, we should be giving the feedback, not on inference. And we cannot make judgments. We can only give descriptions. And next one is, it should be related to a specific situation. On that particular day, when you were changing the roller in the conveyor, you failed to put the emergency. Like that, it should be specific. You should not speak, you are always careless, you do not follow safety norms. Like that, we should not comment. While giving feedback, it should be specific. Here and now. It cannot be there and then. On that day, you did something like that, I was hearing, like that, we should not. We should be specific. The next one is focus feedback on the sharing of ideas and information rather than on giving advice. We should not switch to advisory mode always. Then it will become a sermoning, and these people will have a deaf ear towards our breathing. So it should be a sharing of ideas and information rather than giving advice. Next one on feedback is focused feedback on what is required. Focus feedback on what is said rather than why it is said. Yeah. We are going to see the challenges. What are all the challenges in previous? Please click on. Site hazard, address behavior, owning responsibility, unskilled and migrant workers. Now, organizations are offloading all the work activities. They get only contractors for carrying out regular activities. So every time people get changed. So that is one problem. Then tolerance towards non-compliance. I used to tell in all my programs, any employee, any supervisor, any leader, they should develop intolerance towards deviations. By developing intolerance towards deviations, then and there we will be asking. Otherwise, it will continue. If you are not condemning an unsafe act, we are not only stopping it, and we are condoning it. We are becoming party to that unsafe act. Next time it will continue. So tolerance towards non-compliance is a challenge. Lack of implementing HSE systems, predetermined HSE systems, that is a challenge. Physical site hazard, that is a challenge. That is non-engineering practices and situations which warrant engineering changes, that is physical site hazard. A ladder is not properly placed, layout of the plant is not good, like that. And owning responsibility. People are reluctant in owning responsibility, and people resorting to at-risk behaviors. These are all the challenges towards BBS implementation. We have to keep all these things in our mind and work towards addressing these aspects. Next slide, please. So normally, employees have negative perceptions. That is, 60% of our employees think they would be blamed if they report an incident. 47% believe they or a co-worker will be disciplined if they are involved in any event. But 52% believe the incident would become a part of their permanent record and would somehow negatively affect them in the future. Their promotion or their increment will get affected like that. 60% would not report an incident if they could avoid it. That is why most of the access behaviors, unsafe acts, near me, they go unrecorded. They are not in a position to take corrective measures. That is one of the challenges. But when we go for safety observations through BBS, we are more exposed to these aspects in the site, and we will be recording it without fail, and we will be bringing them into books, and we will be taking remedial measures. Next, please.
Sargunan sir,
Yeah.
are we almost nearing end? I think we are. How many slides more, sir?
We will be taking it for another 10 minutes.
Okay, fine. Right, go ahead, sir.
Okay. Hello.
Go ahead, sir. Audible, sir.
Hello.
Proceed, sir.
Voice is not clear.
It is audible.
Okay, audible.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Yeah, proceed, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Please
Yes.
speak on, sir. Speak on, sir.
Okay. So the current process revealed several weaknesses. Employee involvement is not there. Expertise or training provided on psychology and human factors is not there. Behavior analysis tools are not used. Mostly it demands employee action. Mostly the counsel for the employee or discipline the employee, like that it is ended up. And the communication of the incident is haphazard. And the follow-up actions are not satisfactory. Until these recommendations are fulfilled, things are not followed up. And generalization of follow-up actions was infrequent. That is CAPA, corrective action and preventive action. Generalization means one action is taken towards at-risk behavior. Similar at-risk behavior should also be taken in the same treatment. So that is not there. Generalization of follow-up actions was infrequent. Then communication of the completion of the follow-up activities was haphazard. Suppose if somebody seeks some engineering change, if that is made or some proposal is made for that, that is not getting communicated to the concerned person. Because of that, what will happen? People will lose hope over BBS, or the safety observation is only a humbug. Like that, they may start feeling. So these are all some of the things, weaknesses identified in BBS. There are few more. Next slide. A lack of planned ongoing feedback to measure the effectiveness of the behavioral approach. Whatever that has been implemented, whether that improvement is continuous, is it sustained, that is not being followed up. Then treating behavioral safety as a separate program. BBS is not a separate program. It is only to assist the proper implementation of the existing safety management program. So that should be thought in the mind. So BBS alage, safety management system alage. So like quality management system, procedure says something, I do it some other way, in the plant. And like that, treating behavioral safety as a separate program, that is difficult. People are punished for failure to behave safely. So punishment should be the very extreme step we can take. Then failure to conduct regular feedback sessions should be kept always informed. It is an ongoing process that should always be kept in mind. So lack of ongoing management support. So if management support is ongoing, the process will be ongoing. It has to be practiced regularly without any stoppage. Next. Okay, there is a risk. Thinking that observation and participation are the core of BBS. Only not that. Reinforcement, feedback, adhering to norms, giving proper feedback, whatever now we have seen, they are all put together is BBS. Next slide. BBS focuses on what people do, analyzes why they do it, and then applies a research-supported intervention strategy to improve what people do. At its very core, BBS is based on larger scientific field called organizational behavior analysis. It is not only observation and participation. The next risk is failing to apply positive reinforcement systematically and effectively. We have already seen this. Next slide, please. Harmonious factors needed for success of BBS. Management should be committed. Significant participation should be there from the people. It should be well planned in advance. Adequate training and communication should be ensured. All levels of personnel should be involved. BBS meeting, even the unit head or the CEO, they should take one. Review meeting. The top man of the organization should sit for the monthly meeting. Then only the seriousness or the effectiveness of BBS will be sustained. Or otherwise it will die down. It will have its natural death. So BBS should consider safety issues. It is existing in the work situation. It cannot be bookish. Whatever issues are being faced in the shop floor, that should be given importance in all our programs. And for recognition for safe behavior is another important factor for the success. It should become a daily work culture. Recognition should become a daily work culture. I appreciate him. He is always a good worker. What is there in appreciating him every day? You should not think. As I was telling the parents, every time we do good, we should be appreciated. Next slide. Some tips: set clear and realistic goals. Pilot the intervention in a small section when you are introducing in your plan. Introduce it in small section and then do it. See it. Contact similar companies and get feedback and input. Listen to your employees. Give them enough chance to tell about what it is, to know about what it is, and give their feeling. And involve employees early, from the beginning. For a TV serial to come, or 3 or 4 months back, they start advertisement. For a new movie to be launched, they have a lot of premiere, video cassette release or audio cassette release like that. So before launching BBS, we should involve employees early. We are going for such program. This is not to find fault with you. This is to improve the behavioral aspect. Like that, we should focus. Next slide. Tailor the language to suit your organization. It should be in the local language, preferably. Market it to the employees. That's what I was sharing. Focus on the real root causes. Should not end up with the employee should be more careful. The employee should be attentive. It cannot end up like that. Even during incident investigations, it should not end up with the physical or human factor. It should end up with system factor. One individual made a mistake. The tool was not all right. It should not end up with that. We are not having a system of checking toolboxes. We are not having the system of checking welding machines or electrically operated handheld appliances on quarterly basis. Like that, it should end up with system. Always emphasize on system causes and not physical and human causes. So always emphasize That safety is a core value, not a priority. Some of the elements for effective DBS, formal standards for behavior and performance, resources to meet and exceed standards. Number 3, next please. A system of measurement. We should always have a measurement for any progress. Which cannot be quantified is not a progress. So effective consequences should be soon, certain, significant, and sincere. Next please. And appropriate application. The selection criteria. How employees are selected for recognition and reward. It should be fair. It should be uniform, irrespective of any worker. It should be based on facts and figures that we are appreciating them. And the 6th point is continual evaluation of the system. The system is married to the accountability system. So people should be accountable for this and it should be evaluated. Whoever they have to carry out their role, everybody has to fulfill their role. Then only the system will go. The man who is observing, he is observing. The committee which has to decide on action, they are deciding. And the people who have to enforce it or implement it, they are failing. There cannot be a progress. So accountability for every team member has to be fixed. Improvements headed up by line management. Line management should also own responsibility for implementation of safety. So these are all the key elements of an effective DBS system. So safe behaviors are observed, recognized, and rewarded, and unsafe behaviors are discussed and corrected. We must strive to reach the highest state where each one is worried about the other person. Each one looks after everyone else and safe behaviors are reached. So now we will have a small analysis in a different perspective of what we have discussed till now. Now, on a structured basis, how we will be implementing DBS, how it is being implemented in good organization, what are all the challenges, how we can overcome that we have seen. But we will now laterally see, we'll have a lateral thinking on what actually risk is. Usually risk is not the reason. I mean, at-risk behavior is not the reason. It's only a result. Why people going for at-risk? Poor or imperfect communication. They are not communicated. Poor ergonomics. No supervision. Peer pressure. There is a pressure on work pressure. Confusing bad habit. They follow some bad habit. They themselves don't know whether it is right or wrong. There is no reinforcement or there is no feedback. And lack of training. Next, please. So, why employees engage in at-risk behavior? Jobs get done faster. Perception of risk is low. Nothing is going to happen to me attitude. At-risk behavior is reinforced. I am not worried about how you do it. The work should be completed. So that is the reinforcement of at-risk behavior. Then lack of awareness that behavior is risky. So that is why employees engage in at-risk behavior. Next, please. Almost human factors like rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency. I underline rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency. That leads to injuries. That leads to overlook, forget, or ignore an important safety regulation. That will be giving the result as eyes and mind of the task trip over their own feet or wander into the line of fire. So, by rushing, frustration and fatigue and complacency, we overlook and forget or ignore an important safety regulation Because of that, our eyes and mind are off the task. We trip over our own feet. We wander in the line of fire. We go in a place where material is being lifted. We go into a place where cutting activity is going on. Likewise. Next slide, please. Now this explains very clearly the status that affect worker safety: rushing, frustration, fatigue, and complacency. It can cause critical errors and critical decisions. When you are angry, don't take decisions, people will tell. Likewise, when you are rushing, when you are frustrated, when you are fatigued, when you are complacent, critical errors can come. Wrong decisions can be taken. For example, changing what you normally do, choosing a shortcut, rationalizing or miscalculating risk, or relying on memory. These things will come when we are rushing, frustrated, fatigued, and complacent. So everything is now put in a single slide here. These things lead to less risk and more risk. Next, please. Telling someone about a risk is not enough. Having told all the previous slides, we should offer people tools which can be part of their activity. 4 states cause and telling not to run, not to get frustrated, not to become complacent, that will not change any person. So we should give them some tool. Next one, next slide. Not all errors and mistakes get us hurt. Critical errors, on the other hand, can expose us to hazardous energy. Next slide. Eyes not on task, mind not on task, moving into the line of fire. We are losing balance or traction and grip. Just telling someone about these errors is not enough to avoid them. If you were to combine these 4 states with these errors, we would have something that people can use. What is that? We can quickly think whether we have our eyes on the task, whether our mind on the task, if we are on the line of fire, or have lost our balance or traction or grip. Suppose I have to catch the train. I'm hurriedly going in the two-wheeler. I will park the two-wheeler in the station and go into the train. So then I should make myself aware. In order to catch the train, am I going fast? In order to catch the train, am I violating the rules? By that, if we should start thinking about these 4 states is enough to prevent the error from occurring. So it may take some time to practice this, but once we practice this, we can become masters of them. Next slide, please. So we can, previous. We can quickly thinking about these 4 states is enough. It may take some time for us to master this. Next slide. Complacency. Now we talked about rushing, fatigue, and we are in confusion and all. But complacency, that happens over a period of time. It do not happen all of a sudden. Once we become regularly practice to one activity, we continue to do the same way. How to overcome this? Next slide. Subconscious mind will learn. If you can make efforts to maintain a safe distance when driving, our subconscious will maintain the same safe distance for us, even if our mind has a momentary lapse of concentration. You get this point? You are habitual, you will be driving, somebody will be distracting you, suddenly you feel somebody else is coming before you, you check your speedometer, you will be going by 40 only. Your legs are habituated in such a way that when you press, automatically you are going by this speed of 40. If you are regularly practicing the safe speed, always, even in a confused state, even when you are in urgency, subconsciously, consciously, you will be following the right route. That is what it is said in this slide. If you can make efforts to maintain a safe distance when driving, our subconscious mind will maintain the same safe distance for us, even if our mind has a momentary lapse of concentration. Similarly, if we always drive within legal speed limit, we are not likely to go over it 24 or 32 kilometers higher than what is required, even if our mind drifts off. Got my point? Next slide, please. Analyze close calls. That is why whenever we are making a critical error, we should ask ourselves, was this caused by rushing, frustration, or fatigue? Was it complacency leading to mind not on task, eyes not on task, leading to critical errors? Analyzing close calls and minor errors will help people to continually improve by showing them what skills and habits they need to work on. Next slide. So this is a practice which we can start practicing in our own life, and being a safety professional or a leader, we can tell the same tactics to our people in the shop floor. We will have one more further hazard, which is caused through BBS and how to come out of that. Hazards cause injuries and work organization madness. A work-related injury and illness are the result of exposure to hazards. If there is no hazard, people will not get hurt. That is the fact. That is the content of this slide. Next slide. So given that for the foreseeable future, many workers will still be exposed to some level of hazard in their work environment. How work is organized influences workers' exposure to psychological stress and to physical hazards, and affects the rate and severity of work-related injuries and illness. Is it not? Next slide. So finding and fixing hazards and paying attention to work organization factors such as workload, what is the workload, what is the work base, what is the staffing level, out of 5 people, only 3 people are available, hours of work, whether they are exceeding the normal 8 hours, whether they are exceeding even 12 hours, contract welder is asked to work 2 shifts or 3 shifts, they sleep inside the site itself and start working. These type of things and production pressures are essential ingredients in creating work environments that minimize the possibility of job-related injuries, illness, and stress. Without bothering of all these things, if we implement BBS, BBS alone will not be effective. That is the concept of these hazards I am highlighting. Next please. So the hazard of behavior safety. The blame the worker approach of behavioral based safety program is compatible with and designed to represent an alternative to efforts, including those mandated by law. That is, to identify and eliminate or reduce hazards responsible for the epidemic of worker injuries, illness, and death. Without focusing on this area, if we blame the worker, that is one of the hazards. If the organization are not fully realizing the approach of BBS and always point out the worker without focusing on the other aspects of evaluating the working conditions, it is a hazard. In a time of major work restructuring and speed up during a big shutdown or during a project, critics say the focus on individuals at the expense of work environment makes the behavior-based safety programs themselves a work hazard that must be eliminated. The next table says the major, next slide. This slide says the causes commonly identified by local union advocates: equipment not available, contractor causing burns, faulty equipment, hazards not identified, lack of training, exposure to energy, and so many and so forth. Next slide. Behavior-based safety programs attempt to change worker behavior what we have found is that the workplaces using these programs are much more likely not to address the hazards that are in fact the root causes of worker injury, illness, and death. As I was mentioning, traditional, conventional safety management system, only behavior-based safety is taken as a remedy, these things will happen. At a behavioral safety workplace, hazards often do not get identified, and even when identified, do not get fixed. I have seen so many organizations, National Safety Council makes the audit and gives umpty number of recommendations, but there is no proper follow-up. Only certain recommendations are implemented, others are not implemented. Likewise, if an organization implements BBS on a piecemeal basis, forgetting about the conventional safety norms, then BBS will not work. And the last paragraph says, workers receive feedback from observers that encourages them to work more safely around the hazard, but the hazard itself does not get eliminated or controlled. As long as the hazard remains, the potential for injury or illness remains. That is the bitter truth. Next slide. Unsafe and unsound. Instead of having a focus on identifying hazards and eliminating or reducing them, the emphasis of a behavior safety program is on getting workers to work around hazards that should not be there in the first place. The same thing is repeated here. Next slide. Why? That particular union leader who have enough researched on improper implementation of BBS is top US expert on union responses. What she says, health and safety approaches that focus on workers' behavior condemn workers as the problem. Unions see workers as the solution. There is no one better to identify the hazards on the job or come up with ideas to eliminate or reduce those hazards than the worker doing the job. If a job is being done unsafely, a good rule of thumb is ask why 5 times. Example, the next slide. Andrea got something in her eye at work. But why? Because she was not wearing her safety glasses. But why? Because they were all scratched and she could not see out of them. But why? Because her employer bought the really cheap glasses that get scratched all the time. But why? Because her employer wanted to save money. But why? Because profits are more important to her employer than worker safety and health. So this is what that union leader says about mismanagement of behavioral management sets. If the organization have real intention improving the overall culture of the organization and they implement BBS, they should take care of safety management system first. Next slide. Why asking why questions allows an inquiry to get to root causes. An approach that blames workers for their bad behavior thwarts real prevention efforts. Next slide. So they go in for blame game, reduced hazard mitigation, driving data underground, ignoring safety specialists. Next slide. They also express concern that because behavior safety encourages the involvement of people who are not safety specialists, this approach bypasses a site safety specialist and de-skills the safety function, that is ignoring safety specialists. Driving data underground, they always want to present a rosy picture and they do not make a proper recording of near miss incidences, non-reportable accidents, and so on. Then reduced hazard mitigation. They worry that managers will think that once they have implemented behavior-based safety, they can stop pursuing engineering controls for hazard mitigation. So they think BBS is an alternative for safety management system. That is another problem. And the last one is behavior-based safety tracks shop floor behavior. They predict that it will necessarily turn into fault finding and blame. So these are all the shortcomings that has to be overcome. Next slide. Moving into second generation of BBS. Behavior-based safety has moved from being a curiosity to becoming an established part of many companies' safety program. But what is the right perspective? Is it passing fad that will soon die away? Or, as we saw with ASAP, is it a foundation methodology for the future? The second one is right. The answer depends on how we see the field of safety and what next steps we take. We discussed typical shortcomings in what some people call behavior-based safety. What are all the shortcomings? We have already seen. Strategies for maintaining the strengths. We also discussed that. Now, rethink the old concepts, making the radical proposal that we should take away the emphasis from behaviors. We should take away the emphasis from behaviors and focus instead on the working interface. What is the workload? What is the efficiency of the maintenance and so forth? And use behavior-based safety methodology as a foundation for organizational change. For changing the approach of people, behavior-based safety has to be used. For changing the working condition in the plant, the traditional concepts of engineering change, all those five elements which we discussed, that has to be. Next slide, please. So they had a survey, some 13 sites, and they made some 13,264 observations. Out of that, 33% is facility and equipment. That is deficiency in facility and equipment. 22% hazard recognition and response, HIRA, is not properly done. 9% disagreement on safe practices. People do not agree. I was telling that the amplitude, the wavelength of all the employees should be the same. What I think as unsafe should be thought by others also as unsafe. So that disagreement on safe practices, that goes to 9%. Culture, 7%. The culture of the organization. Business incomes, 4%. Allocation of fund and so on. Then rewards and recognition, that is impediment for 3%. That is not properly done. Personal factors of individual, I don't agree. I will not follow. I am not contributing or representing to this view. That is 5%. Then personal choice. I choose to work like this. Whatever the procedure says, my style is this. That is 17%. So now you see whether facility, equipment, and hazard recognition, that is at fault or behavior is at fault. So the major chunk is to be addressed through management systems. Next slide. So as we know that the barriers to safe behavior are primarily related to conditions, equipment, and management systems rather than to personal choice. It no longer seems reasonable to state that 80 to 95% of injuries are caused by unsafe acts. What we saw in the beginning of this program, Enrich told 85 to 90% of injuries are caused due to unsafe acts. But having gone through the entire presentation, the odds and events, the favoring and contradicting views, We come to the conclusion now. Always unsafe acts are not only responsible, that is only the last part of it. We have seen that graph, we could improve based on systems a lot. What is left out by behavioral aspect is only 15%. We have seen in the issue, we should remember the initial graph. That behavioral gap is only so small. For that we are using PBS. Even that 15% is removed by introduction of behavioral based safety aspects, we can have 100%. That is the concept. 80 to 95% has to be achieved through proper systems. However carefully we face it, many people will still read that as requiring us to make a choice between behaviors and facilities and implying blame for the worker if he or she acted unsafely. We always now still point out worker is unsafe. The focus of our safety improvement efforts has to change from the worker to the systems that enable safe behavior. That also varies from industry to industry. Incidents are caused by multiple factors which are seen in the working interface. Many exposures are likely to occur before an injury. The specific relationship between exposure and injury varies with the type of industry and type of injury. Now what to do? Next please.
Sir, you'll have to conclude. I think we are running out of time.
Closing. With 3 more slides, we are closing.
Yeah.
What to do? Ultimately, what we are going to do? The previous slide. We have a 3-component approach. Safety management system. How does the current system that is being used to manage safety in the workplace need to be changed? What engineering controls can be implemented to reduce or eliminate some of the causes of at-risk behavior? Next slide. Behavioral interventions. You may provide all the proper tools, training, and adequate supervision, but people may still be working in postures or positions that occasionally put themselves at risk. This may be conscious or unconscious behavior. Look at other job aids that may increase safe behavior awareness. What sort of self-monitoring techniques can be employed? As we discussed, rushing, frustration, complacency, how to avoid those things? How can the necessary behavior changes be shaped and reinforced? So all these 3 elements has to be worked together. Effective solutions may often require a combination of all the 3 approaches. Safety management systems should be there. Engineering controls should be practiced, and behavioral interventions should also be there. The last slide, please. So interventions will always have these 3 components: safety management system, engineering controls, and behavioral based safety. I think I made an earnest effort in presenting what is traditional, why BBS is required, what is the behavioral gap, to address that, how behavioral based safety is going to help, why behavioral safety is not an all-cue measure in conjunction with safety management system, engineering controls, and behavior. So that is the conclusion we should carry in our mind. We should always work towards a 0 accident, 0 incident organization by way of adhering to our regular norms combined with the behavioral based safety approach. Next slide, please. Hello. Change the slides.
Next slide.
Are you hearing? The last slide, the thank you slide. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. I think very exhaustive presentation, starting from the basics of BBS, history of BBS, the need for BBS, at-risk behavior of employees that contribute to accidents. Talked about the four critical errors that contribute to accidents, especially if the eyes and minds are out of action, subconscious mind is not there. Definitely you are there causing accidents, not only for self, but also for the rest of the people. Harmonious factors that are required for success of behavior-based safety. The positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. In fact, most of our systems run on negative reinforcement, especially even the legal systems or even the traffic management system. Everything works on negative reinforcement, so also in factories. Recognizing the need for safe behavior. I think not only the safe behavior-based safeties, but also the safety hazards needs to be taken care about it. Then you touched exhaustively very detailed on the tips for successful implementation of BBS program in a factory, especially suggesting to have a pilot scale model, clear realistic focus on targets and goals, feedbacks being taken from employees, listen early, and involve them also early to make it success. And then ultimately you became a marketing person trying to say that the success ultimately depends on how you market to the employees, that it is a core value to be considered in every action and not just as an external point. Also touched upon the key elements of BBS, like the formal standards for behavior, the resources to be covered, the measurement systems, the effective consequence, appropriate application, continual evaluation, so on and so forth. Ultimately, what the message that you had is the three interventions is not only the BBS, but also you should have a very comprehensive safety management system and engineering controls and along with a behavior-based safety system, an organization, a community, or the nation can be very safe. So very exhaustive, sir. Thank you very much for your time and very passionate lessons that you have taught us today. Would give a great way in enhancing our learnings about BBS and bringing it across more comprehensively across our companies. So I now request Rafiq to deliver the formal vote of thanks. Over
Thank
to
you,
Rafiq.
Nandakumar, sir. First of all, I extend our heartfelt thanks to Sargunan, sir, for giving such a wonderful talk. And it was really a great speech and great talk you had given today. So on behalf of National Safety Council, HSE Forum, National Safety Council, Kerala chapter, we extend our warm and we extend our heartfelt thanks to you, sir. And next, I would like to thank our Nandakumar, sir. He is the heart and soul of our HSE Forum Committee, National Safety Council. And we are very thankful to you, sir. And all the coordinators who are the part of the National Safety Council, Kerala chapter. And thank you very much. And last but not the least, all our audience and all our attendees from various organizations and institutions. We on behalf of Kerala chapter and National Safety Council, we are very thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.